We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for future. Quote Franklin D. Roosevelt. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. I welcome you all to session 3 of the International Conference 2023 on Circular Economy, the Frontier of Sustainability. I now request Ms. Roshni KK, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce Self-Supporting, to introduce the speakers of the session.
Sustainability is no longer about doing less harm. It's about doing more good. Quote and unquote, Joshin Zaits. Very good afternoon to everyone. We have with us today Ms. Christabel QA Derby. Ms. Christabel QA Derby is a lawyer by profession and the CEO of the Derby's Foundation, Ghana. She is a community skills trainer and winner of several awards with 10 years of experience in leadership in various global and national organizations ranging from leadership, public policy, and engagement to career development. She is currently the Vice Chairperson of Inclusion and Engagement for the Commonwealth Youth Council. Thank you for accepting our invitation, ma'am. We are happy to have you with us today. Our next speaker for the day is Mr. Hamza Abdiwahab. Mr. Hamza Abdiwahab, founder of Diplomacy Talk Series, an initiative that raises awareness on the Sustainable Development Goals in Malaysia, the Maldives, Kenya, and Somalia. Mr. Hamza is also a fellow at the Nasser Presidential Leadership Foundation, Egypt, Somalia, Somalia Youth Representative at the UN Least Developed Countries Conference, and a TEDx speaker. He has spoken at various international conferences in Kenya, Egypt, the UAE, the Maldives, Morocco, and Russia concerning youth, sustainable development goals, and policy making. Thank you for accepting our invitation, sir. We are delighted to have you with us today. I now request Mr. Hamza Abdiwahab to take over the session.
Thank you so much to the wonderful MCs for introducing me in such a humble way. First of all, Vanakam everyone, and I would like to thank Etraj College for Women for inviting me, for the Postgraduate and Research Department of Commerce for inviting me to attend the International Conference on Circular Economy and the Frontiers of Sustainability. It's a wide topic that needs to be taken very seriously, and today I'll be speaking about importance of circular economy in the African continent, and also strengthening the policies and alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. I wanted to make a presentation, but I thought maybe I will make a quick speech and a lecture on circular economy in the African continent, and then later on maybe we can go from there on. So starting with there's some economists in Africa, well-known East African economists, have suggested that transitioning to circular economy could help reduce greenhouses gas emissions by 45% by 2030. Circularity is particularly relevant for African countries whose economy remain largely resource dependent and under sustained pressure for rapid population growth. So it's very important for African continent to have the circular economy, in particular to sustain pressure from rapid population growth. But of course, it does not measure with the rapid population growth of India. And for now, I think India is the number one populous country in the world by 2023. Moving forward, a transition to a green economy is an opportunity to promote social inclusion, poverty eradication, sustained economy and employment growth while maintaining a healthy ecosystem. Africa can quickly adopt circular principles because its ecological footprint is still low and there is a growing interest in the circular economy. Circular practices are embedded in many of the African continent's culture and activities, particularly within micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, known as MSMEs or SMSMEs. More recently, the emergence of economic activities centered around repairing, refurbishing, recycling, and end-of-life product, as well as growing access to renewable energies that have contributed to expanding circular systems in Africa. Nonetheless, the circular economy model is yet to be to become a viable contributor to national development on the continent, as the circular practices have mainly remained in the informal sector, meaning that it is not readable yet in terms of development in the continent, but because of these circular activities are done in informal sectors, but now it's thinking about shifting for them from informal to formal sectors. This is now where policymakers come on board. Policymakers have a significant role in promoting the circular transitions. Global shocks, including the current COVID-19 pandemic, have forced countries to restructure their economies. Africa is in a solid position to take advantage of these emerging opportunities to reform. So the main important part in circular economy, especially in the African continent, is to concerning the policymakers. So policymakers have an important role playing on the circular transition, especially in the economy. So the policymakers advance the transitions. The regulatory frameworks can support the mainstream of circularity. Tax breaks for circular businesses and higher taxes for wasteful products create incentive for private sectors to promote circular solutions. Also, institutional schemes such as paperless procurement and plastic bans in government institutions. I'll give you an example of plastic bans by governments, especially in Kenya and Tanzania. They banned plastic use in the informal and formal business day-to-day run. Example like kiosk buying shops or vegetables or groceries. They have banned plastic bags in Kenya and in Tanzania, and more African countries are following in that pursuit. On the other hand, households can promote the transition by adopting new practices. Policy incentives and advocacy can encourage households to adopt new methods and consumption, such as sharing and renting. This creates an opportunity for continent like Africa with growing population and economy to ensure that socio-economic progress is not coupled with unsustainable consumption patterns. Of course, the challenges is that the circular economy cuts across sectors which are already regulated, such as agriculture, waste management, energy and trade. Instead of implementing policies in silos, policymakers need to integrate the principles of circularity in existing regulations. The development of national circular economy roadmaps that align action to transform existing value chains are a tool for this. And certain countries like South Africa has actually come up with a brilliant roadmaps in transitioning their economy into a circular economy that helps the growing population and the growing economy of South Africa that is going to be heading to 2023. Okay, so a circular economy roadmap encourages positive changes. How? National and regional circular economies roadmaps outline the practices steps for society to move from a linear take a make waste model into economic model that protects resources and elements waste. In 2016, there was a research done under the leadership of Citra, a Finland company that done an amazing research in Africa, was the first country in the world to create a national circular economy roadmap. This map has resulted into commitments, but also it actually improved policymakers to move to a real action productivity, which is more countries are creating similar maps. So Citra has created a guide to support and inspire others in the process. African countries, they have inspired African countries such as Nigeria, Rwanda, Ghana, and as I mentioned before, South Africa. They are showing high interest in creating national circular economy roadmaps, and some have already started the process. As I have mentioned, South Africa is actually leading in that circular transition roadmap in the African continent currently. The most important part, of course, of the development is to design a solution that works in a given context, not just copying what someone else has done, of course, but to consider the capability and resources of each country. Winning solutions are not created using only the old top-down way of doing things, but rather the diverse cooperation and preserving with efforts and commitments. A government, business, academia, civil society need to be involved in the process as they all play a crucial role in the circular transition. Of course, global value chains require international governance. As a modern global value chains go beyond national borders, regional and international implications need to be taken carefully into account. For example, a more restrictive policy on trade of products and waste in one country it could redirect material flows to countries with looser regulation, meaning that there's other countries that are developed countries, their wastes are actually being transported to the African Ocean or the Indian Ocean, where they dump their waste there, which of course will affect the socio circular economy of that particular countries. But it's now how we as a global citizens or global chains should make international requirements on to stop such illegal activities. A platform for policy dialogues is encouraged. Knowledge sharing and project coordination, such as the African Circular Economy Alliance. Actually an African Union body called the African Circular Economy Alliance (ACEA) that actually looks on the development of circular transitions in the African continent. Can enable greater collaboration at the regional and continental levels in areas such as policy, harmonization, technology transfer, continental initiatives like Africa-wide circular economy roadmaps. Even there's actually Africa India circular economy alliance where African countries and Indian government is actually working on improving circular economy in Africa with the help, of course, with the help of the Indian government. However, the regional lenses alone is not enough. To prevent leakages, the African framework must be aligned with global best practices such as India and international conventions. The role of infrastructure is very important when it comes to circular economy. Governments also need to promote circularity indirectly by creating favorable infrastructure to support establishment of circular value chains, communications and transportation networks, as well as energy and factories for sustainable processing to enable the private sectors to transform production in Africa. African countries have successfully leapfrogged into mobile phone technology. I don't know if most of the participants in our conference today know that African countries are using mobile money. There's no need to use online money. Many people are using their Nokia phones to transfer money. And I think it's similar to in India where there's Google Pay and other online money transaction. But of course, there's need for internet to be used when you're transferring through Google Pay. But in Africa, we have mobile money, which has improved the lives of thousands and millions of Africans on hold. So this actually has helped into mobile phone technology and could do the same. The same mobile money technologies that we are using. Some countries are actually thinking on shifting these similar technologies to be used in a renewable energy. However, the mainstreaming of circular innovations could be hindered by poor infrastructure and compliance issues stemming from policy gaps. And countries like India, countries like China, and countries like Japan have actually become an alliance to the African continent in terms of actually giving them a mainstream to innovate their infrastructure in terms of technology and other innovations that are there. Another indirect mechanism is to encourage the private sector and the industries to develop voluntary incentive mechanism to foster their transition to circular business models and enable them to take advantage of the new market opportunities. Local chambers of commerce and industry organizations have an important role in this development when it comes to policy making and regulations. Ensuring a just transition. The circular economy provides a prime opportunities to create new economic activities and support job creation. Nonetheless, workers, particularly in informal industries, need new skills to find jobs in the new economy. Otherwise, all the human potential is wasted. Governments needs to make sure that school systems provide quality education in this dynamic and fast evolving atmosphere, and the workers are proactively offered lifelong learning. And with that, it's very important for us now to take this transition into a global chain where we can all benefit as a global citizens. And of course, without forgetting implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals that which will be needed to be achieved in 2030, which is another 7 more years to go. So with that, I would like to thank again Ethraj College for Women for actually giving me this opportunity. And with that, Nandri Vanakam, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your aspiring and informative session. Now it's time for a quick Q&A session. So the first question: what are the policy challenges in Africa?
Actually, that's a very good question. There's a lot of policy challenges in Africa when it comes to security, when it comes to economic development, when it comes to education, and of course, poverty plays a big role in advancing the policies in Africa. But the main challenges I can say for now is basic policy needs that a normal citizen might need is education, the security. There's a lot of terrorism that is going on within Africa, but currently governments are trying to come together. We have an African Union body. With that African Union body, all the 54 African countries come together to make policies. On top of that, we have also sub-regional bodies that pre hold policies in Africa, which the East African body, the South African body, the West African bodies, which of course they come up with their own policies to safeguard their regions in going further to the future and actually reaching sustainable development goals. But I guess that's the main issues are security and of course and education policies that need to be really looked into.
So the next question, sir: how does circular economy reduce waste?
It actually it reduces by there's many ways. In first of all by in creating greenhouses. As I said in my speech, to create that circularity or circular economy, uh, greenhouses, gas emissions can be used as to reduce the circular economies. And another way to use it is through policies and actually through infrastructure, where now infrastructures are made to make those waste to be reduced. Example. Uh, Other countries in the European countries, they have certain departments in every school, in every university, in every government and offices where they separate between the plastic, they separate between the aluminiums, they separate between papers, all the wastages into different sectors, and then they start to now to be recycled again. So of course, circular economy is very important when it comes to reduced waste.
The next question: how does starting now will help you achieve the 2030 goals?
Of course, we are very late. 2030 is not that far. It's 7 years from now on. But again, it's not too late to start achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not saying that it should be achieved from top to down, but rather from down to top. And then from there on, we can get achieved. So people, students like us should be more involved in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and making awareness. That's the important thing of the Sustainable Development Goals, I can say for now.
So last question, sir: which country is leading in circular economy?
In terms of the world, I'm more into the African continent, which I've mentioned Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, currently leading in circular economy, and it's good for us now for us to learn about those countries in that particular ways. Yes.
So thank you, sir, for your informative session. Thank you for patiently answering all our questions. So I now call upon Ms. Christabel QAW to take over the session.
Thank you so much, everyone. Nandri Vanakkam.
Hello.
Ma'am, very good afternoon, ma'am. You can take over the session now.
Very well. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish to apologize for my camera as I'm having a little bit technical issues with it.
That is absolutely
My
fine,
name
ma'am.
is
No issue.
Christabel. That's fine. My name is Christabel Derby, and I'm the Vice Chairperson for Inclusion and Engagement of the Commonwealth Youth Council. The Commonwealth Youth Council is the official representative voice of all the 1.2 billion young people in the 56 Commonwealth countries. Today, I'll be speaking on the inclusion of youth in the achievement of sustainable goals. But before that, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to today's conference. I'm very much honored to be part of this conference. My presentation will have three main topics. The first one, we would look at the overview and how many more years we have to achieve the SDGs. We would also look at how the Commonwealth Youth Council is integrating youth in achieving the SDGs. And the third one, we will look at the actions that as youth, as government, and as stakeholders, we can take to achieve the SDGs. The next slide, please. Okay, so looking at the overview, currently, SDG is a decade of action towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And ladies and gentlemen, we currently have just 7 years left to achieve these SDGs. Let's ask ourselves, are we as youth integrated enough in achieving these SDGs? Are we inclusive enough in achieving these SDGs? And are we very sure that by the end of that 7 years, these SDGs would have been achieved? Due to the global crisis, progress has slowed and we've been stagnating at the worst regression. This is especially true in countries all over the world where populations are rapidly increasing. Because looking at the current crisis, like the economic crisis, COVID-19, Ebola, this actually shows that the world is stagnating. So looking at all this crisis happening, are we very sure that by the end of the 7 years, these SDGs would have all been achieved? If not, then we urgently need to take action on the SDGs and get them on track. And one of the ways we can actually do this is to put an improved focus on real meaningful youth engagement in governance and decision making. Next slide, please. One may ask, what then are these sustainable development goals? The Sustainable Development Goals, which is also known as the Global Goals, were adopted by the United Nations in 2015 as the universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Once again, are we sure that by the end of 2030, 7 years to come, that we are going to have an end or keep an end to poverty, protect the planet with all these climate change crises, and we are going to enjoy peace and prosperity? If then what needs to be done in order to ensure that we achieve or we end poverty, in order to assure that we protect the planet, in order to ensure that we enjoy peace and prosperity by the end of the 7 years? Before that, the SDGs are integrated and they recognize that actions in one area will affect the outcomes in the other, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability. Can we please look at the next slide? What then do we need to do if we are serious about making this a reality? Then we need to harness young people's drive, creativity, and skills to contribute to sustainable cities and improve livelihood. Inviting few young people or individuals to high meetings is not enough. It is enough to encourage young people to tell their story, or or just tell their story with no power or decision-making ability. And it is also not enough to hope that their views will someday be taken into consideration, because young people should not just be seen or used as passive receipt beneficiaries or even energetic storytellers. For real change to happen, for us to make sure that what we say is what we do, then we must recognize and prioritize young people as active agents, because young people should not just be involved in the decision making process, but they should be helping to lead it if we really want to achieve the Agenda 2030, the SDGs, by the end of the 7 years. Then we need to include young people. We shouldn't just give them a seat at the table, but they should also be leading, because I believe it is indeed time for young people to take charge of their future. Please, let's go to the next slide. 1 billion people aged 15 years and 29 years live in Commonwealth countries. And the Commonwealth 56 member countries, currently the Commonwealth is 56, we were 54. But Togo and Gabon has joined the Commonwealth, making us 56 member countries. We have a combined population of 2.5 billion people, of which more than 60% are under the age of 30. And the Commonwealth sees young people aged 15 to 29 as assets to a country's development, who should be empowered to realize their potential. Because young people have a proven capability to lead change and are vital and valuable investment for now and the future. Next slide. What then is the Commonwealth Youth Council doing to ensure that the youth are really integrated in achieving these SDGs by the end of 2030? What is the role of the Commonwealth Youth Council in achieving these SDGs? First of all, the Commonwealth Secretariat's Youth Work Development is delivered through the Commonwealth Youth Program, which has been supporting member countries over 40 years. Next slide, please. What we, the Commonwealth Youth Council, is doing to ensure that the youth are really integrated in achieving this SDGs is by 4 ways. One, by engaging and recognizing young people. How do we engage and recognize young people? We do this by supporting effective participations of young women and men in development process and promote their engagement at all levels of decision making, including with heads of government. We also showcase and celebrate the achievement of young people in driving democracy and development to demonstrate their capabilities and inspire future action. Next slide, please. The next thing we are doing as CYC is by supporting member governments. And we do this by providing technical assistance for national and regional youth policies and create youth development frameworks, guidelines, and tools. We also advocate for investment in ministries and programs. Next slide, please. We at Commonwealth Youth Council are also working on the professionalizing of youth work. When we talk about the professionalizing of youth work, we promote the professionalization of youth work by supporting youth work education and training and certain competency standards. We also celebrate good practice and advocate for national and international youth work association. Next slide, please. The last thing is formalizing youth participation to advance the SDGs. Oh, I can't see the slide well. Can you please zoom the slide a bit? Hello? Hello? Hello. Okay, thank you very much. Formalizing youth participation to advance SDGs. Because young people are critical for shaping the future of the Commonwealth and the world. And ensuring that they are in their driving seat is one of CYC's priorities. Because we at Commonwealth Youth Council have committed to prioritizing progress for those who are furthest behind. And the SDGs are designed to end poverty, as I said, hunger, AIDS, and discrimination against women and girls. Ladies and gentlemen, at the past CHOGAM in July at Rwanda, the various heads of government declared 2023 as the year of youth. They declared 2023 as year of youth. And we have set 2023 as year of youth. This was done by our various heads of government from all the 56 Commonwealth countries, because we want to ensure that the youth are really empowered. The youth are really included. The youth are really taking charge of their future. The youth are being integrated in achieving these SDGs that we are talking about today. Next slide, please. So, in conclusion, what action will you take today as a youth? What action will you take today as a professor? What action will you take today as a student? Because for each of the 17 goals, there are many positive actions you can take to make a real change. Believe you me, there are a lot of people who do not even know about the SDGs. But currently, we just have about 7 years left to achieve these SDGs. Or there are people in the room today as students who can't even mention 8 out of the 17 SDGs, or who do not even know about 5 out of the 17 SDGs. As you are being educated today, as you've been involved in this productive conference, be the change and be the ambassador to help integrate youth in the achievement of the SDG, so that we can all help to end the poverty we are talking about, to protect our environment, and for peace to be enjoyed by all citizens. Because the more people who know about the global goals, the more we can achieve, and the higher the chances of us creating a better world for everyone by 2030. The global goals can only be met if we work together. International investment and support is really needed to ensure innovative and technological development, fair trade and market access, especially for developing countries. To build a better world, we need to be supportive, empathic, empathetic, inventive, passionate, and above all, cooperative. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said earlier, let us be the agents of change. Let us be ambassadors, as we've been involved in this year's conference, to ensure that the youth are inclusive, the youth are integrated in the achievement of this SDGs. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I wish you all a successful conference. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am, for the enlightening and informative session. So let us now move on to a quick question and answer session. So the first question: so how can sustainability be practiced in daily life?
Hello.
Can you hear me, ma'am? Hello.
Yes, please, I can hear you now.
Yes, ma'am. The first question is: how can sustainability be practiced in daily life?
Okay. Thank you very much for such a wonderful question. Now, we all are talking about the global goals, the sustainable development. To enable, and I believe that to enable progress in sustainable development, we have to partner or our customs to fulfill their commitments. How do I put it? We have to actually in our daily life or in our life as students, let me put it that way, we need to help practice this. First of all, when I was a youth, or yes, I'm still a youth, when I was in the university, I took it upon myself that I want to help end hunger. And how did I do this? I set up a foundation and I involved other students in my school. We didn't have the money to run this foundation, but we seek support from people and we ensure that we go to the villages or the rural areas to help support them by giving them some food, and also the schools in the rural areas by giving them clothes and some kind of support like books to also study in school. Because coming to my country, there are schools, I don't know of India, but there are schools in this era which are still under trees in the rural areas. There are people who go to school who still do not even have clothes, but probably we have been privileged enough to go to one of the best of schools. So what can we do in our normal life, in our daily life, in our small way? What we were able to do is to put together a foundation to help curb this menace. So in our small way, what can we do? We all know about the SDGs, gender equality, no hunger, equal access, equality, and all that. What can you do in your small way as a person? You just have to sit down, know what you can do best, and in knowing who really you are, just take up, stand up. And I believe that if you are able to come up with a little innovation, you can actually also help solve the sustainable development goals we are trying to achieve by 2030 in your small way, as I did.
The next question. What inspired you to be an environmental activist?
Okay. Thank you very much for this question. And in as much as I am not an environmental activist, yes, but I'm a youth activist, and all these are very important in our daily life, because looking at the current climate actions happening, it's imperative that we all take it upon ourselves to protect our environment, because there are lots of pollutions happening day in and day out, and these things affect us as individuals in one way or the other. So what then can we do? We need to actually, in our own way, in our little way, help protect our environment, help protect our lands. So what actually inspired me to help in the fight of climate crisis, actually, if I should put it, is the current happenings in various countries. The Commonwealth was supposed to host, the Commonwealth was supposed to host our Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting in Pakistan from 20th. And this has actually been cancelled because of the current happenings in Pakistan, as in the earthquakes that happened in Pakistan. So this actually tells us that in the era we are, it is very imperative that we all come together to help fight this menace, or to help fight this canker, because it is not a one man's job, but it has gotten to a place where we all need to realize the importance of protecting our environment as people, as youth, as citizens, and as stakeholders.
The last question. How can startups practice sustainability with limited financial resources?
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. This actually links to my first question as I answered. I told you when I started my foundation, the Derby's Foundation Ghana, which currently have a lot of branches all over Ghana, we didn't even have funds to start. But there was an innovation, there was a plan, and we started soliciting for funds. So if you're able to get your plan well, you have your proposal, you have your plan. Believe you me, if you go to people that this is the plan, this is what I want to do, I am looking at environmental crisis, maybe we are, because there are a lot of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, UN agencies, helping to fund all these organizations or all these startups. But probably sometimes we youths are, I don't know how to put it, we just stand up, because maybe you've seen someone having a startup or having a small company, you also want to do something. No, You have to have a good proposal, know what you're about, know what you want to achieve in the next 5 years, the long-term plan, the short-term plan. If you're able to put this on a letter, on a proposal, and you go to people, you go to the NGOs, you go to the UN organizations, maybe we are working on gender, and you go to Plan International, they are going to support your project actually. Because when I started, we didn't have any money. We didn't even know the reason why we were fighting against hunger and equal access to education. We just had the passion. But when we had our proposal right, our plan right, our strategy right, and we seek for sponsorship, indeed, we got some of the sponsorship, which actually supported us till now. So just have your plan right, your proposal, know what you're about, your long-term plan and your short-term plan. And you'll be able to get some kind of finance to start. Mostly, you don't need a lot of finance to start or to have a startup. The second thing is, when I was in school, in the university, it wasn't because I needed money, but I saw that I could produce detergents and antiseptics. So what I did was I started producing these detergents and antiseptics. And when I sell them, we use the money to fund the foundation. As at the time, we were not even getting money from donors to fund the foundation. So any little thing you can actually do to help your startup, you can actually also look at that. Sometimes it's not all about, when you start initially, it's quite difficult to get the funds from the donors. But if you're able to start in your small corner, the support will also come.
That brings us to the end of the question and answer session, ma'am. So thank you, ma'am, for patiently answering all the questions. I now call upon Ms. Sindhuja to propose the vote of thanks.
It is not joy that makes us grateful. It is gratitude that makes us joyful. Good afternoon, all. On behalf of the Postgraduate and Research Department of Commerce, Etherage College for Women, I take this opportunity to thank Ms.Christabel Q.A. Derby for sharing her valuable inputs on the inclusion of youth in achievement of sustainable goals. And I also thank Mr. Hamza Abdiwahab for sharing his inspiring speech on the importance of circular economy. I'm sure the students would have benefited immensely from this session. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to my fellow students who have actively participated in this session. Thank you all once again.